This is probably the first time I've actually spoken at this event. And really, I want to just set the stage with where Constellation sees the world, especially when we're moving in digital business disruption. This is huge. We're in the middle of this right now. And I think a lot of us are having a tough time trying to call it out and say what's really happening. So I'm going to spend some time talking about the pace of change that's happening in the marketplace, talk about what's happening in terms of business model disruption, and then talk a little bit about where these shifts are happening and what you can do about it. And that's pretty much how quick it's going to be. And then we're going to kick off and jump into the Supernova Awards. So the question everybody's asking is, where's your business going to be in 2015? Think about that. That's a 2-year plan. Almost everybody I know doesn't have a 5-year plan or a 3-year plan. Very few people I know even have a 2-year plan. How many guys out there have a 2-year plan for your business? How many guys are really living quarter to quarter? Raise your hands. That's what I thought, right? You have a 2-year plan, but it keeps changing. You got a budget for a year, but you really don't get funded until quarter to quarter. That's the shift that's happening. We are in the midst of a tremendous amount of short-term thinking. And that's what's going on in the marketplace. And that short-term thinking is impacting the largest of companies. Look at the Fortune 500 list. There's an 8% attrition every year in the Fortune 500. So since 2000, 52% of those companies are gone. They've been merged, they've been acquired, they're never going to come back again. And that's a huge shift, and it's happening because of these big forces we've talked about over time. There's 4 things here that are so important, right? Macroeconomic conditions. We're going to hear from Chris Meyer about the future of capitalism. Think about that. We're even questioning capitalism. Where's it going to be? That's capitalism. That's unrest. That's what's happening with natural disasters. These are things out of our control. But there are 3 things here that we can, and that's really thinking about the way we work. We talked about this earlier. There's 5 generations of workers in every company. Those 5 generations, we're not talking about age. I'm not talking about millennials versus Gen Y. I'm not talking about people that are baby boomers versus another group. What I'm talking about is their digital proficiency. We're talking about digital natives, people who grew up in the internet, to digital immigrants that are making their way, to digital voyeurs that are never going to be there, but they're kind of peering at the edges. That's what we're talking about, and how we communicate, where we work, when we work, how we work, what we work. Even the incentives of why we work are completely changing. And that is the basis for a lot of these shifts in how we look at technology, how we look at society, what happens in politics, what's going on the economic front, what's even happening at a legislative level. It's because of these shifts. But these aren't your traditional demographics. These are things that are happening at a digital level. These are digital demographics that are happening. This is as bad as saying digitalization. And then we've got these forces that are happening. There's these disruptive tech forces we talk about. Those are the pillars of digital business. And then the last piece is really digital business models are emerging everywhere. We heard some examples about Uber and Airbnb, but there's more like this that are happening at a faster pace than ever. And that's the first piece. The pace of change is greater than ever, but it's because of these 4 factors that are happening in the marketplace. And we know this: social, mobile, cloud, big data, video. All that is coming together. It's the combination, it's the convergence. It's when they come together, that's when we actually have the shift. Digital business is not happening without these 5 pillars. We talked about these in 2009. We organized as a company in 2010 around these technologies, and we realized there was more here. It was really building businesses around these digital pillars. And I want to show you what happens when you pull all these together. If we can dim down the lights, this is an awesome video of Day in Glass. If we can turn up the volume. It's a Corning video, but take a look at how we're using technology. Someone wakes up in the morning and we're already accessing the cloud. We're touching social networks. This isn't mobility, this is in the house. Digital analytics are occurring, information's being piped in. It's a brand new way of working. Even in the kitchen, imagine cooking and watching TV at the same time. Being able to share information, bring it on from one device to another device, take it inside the automobile, bring that out. Think about classrooms. Classrooms are being transformed right now. Think about the education, the way to bring that together. Look at the way they're mixing colors. They're mixing digital colors, right? And they're sharing that. Medical technologies, digital, mobile, analytics being brought together. A patient in China is being put together and analyzed in a hologram. And then if you just think about simple things on a day-to-day level, what we're doing with maps and technologies and mobility, what happens in the store, what happens with design, how do you recognize them? We talked about presence and identity early. Think about that. Welcome, welcome back. We know who you are. Here's what you're interested in. Check this out. It's bringing that together. Even on a school field trip, augmented reality here, which is an example we talked about. I'm not sure Track is happy about that. But you're looking at this. They're bringing it in. And yes, there is a dinosaur. I don't know what the joke is with that, but it's happening, right? There's always a dinosaur in augmented reality, is what I've been told. I'm not sure why. But you see, this is happening. This is the digital business. But it's not just this. There are business models being disrupted. We are here because the business models are being disrupted. And there are different types of innovation. We talked a little bit about it. Alan had a great talk about purposeful collaboration. He was talking about these shifts. I'm going to give you a little view in terms of what's happening. Now, this is back again. And what is this? Walkman. When did the Walkman come out? 82, 83, 84. It's 83. And I'm going to make one apology to my dear friend Andy Schley at Sony Pictures Entertainment. This is Sony Electronics, so keep that separate. But arguably, this is Sony's last innovation, last disruptive innovation. Think about it, 30 years ago, everything since. PlayStation, it's a copy, the DVD, they did it with Philips, and CD, they did it with Philips. This was the last innovation from Sony. 30 years ago. Now, I cut lawns for a living, as my parents can attest, in the back. And I cut lawns, and then I waited for a Sony Walkman. I waited 4 years for the next incremental innovation. It was $400. I could not buy it in the US. Take a look carefully. This was the innovation. A double cassette Walkman. It's 180 minutes, that's about 10 lawns, and it's got rechargeable batteries and a yellow headset, right? That was the incremental innovation. Now, Sony could have built a lot of things. They could have built this. They could build the iPod. We talked about this earlier. And they had 3 teams working on the iPod. That was the interesting thing. They could have built the iPod, but the iPod's innovation wasn't the fact that it's just another player. The iPod's innovation was the fact that at the height of digital piracy, at the height media and entertainment was dead, nobody was buying content, they convinced you to buy a song for 99 cents. Amazing. You actually paid again. Apple found a way to get you to buy things because you were tired of paying $15 for an album that had only one good song. You wanted to go back and pick up an LP or 45 to be able to get the single that you needed. And they recognized that. That was the innovation. A lot of people could have built that. But at that business model level, this is what we're talking about. Now, what was more exciting was this, right? When you look at the iPhone, this one device destroyed 27 business models, never to come back again. Jobs, organizations, companies, institutions, gone. Part of that Fortune 500 list. How many of you guys develop photos at a 1-hour Photoshop? If you go to Costco for big prints, I get it, okay? How many people have a $400, $300 digital camera? You do? Wait. But we're thinking about SLRs. People buy, Miles, you're not miles ahead anymore. But here's the one we're talking about, navigation devices, right? Where do you buy your music? I'm a DJ, I still go to a record store, but books, music, all gone, right? If you think about what happens with other simple things like a flashlight, it's on here. A watch is on here. A lot of people don't carry watches anymore, wear them because they're here. 27 business models, that's the disruption we're talking about. Sony could have become Apple. They built all the components. They were the leaders in digital lifestyle. Yet Apple became Sony, and that became very, very interesting. And Apple puts out a new phone, two every year. But what the interesting thing is, look at this. Samsung puts out a phone every 36 days. So how many of you guys had an iPhone in 2006? Raise your hands. Raise them high. Impossible. It came out January 2007. Seven years ago, there were no iPhones. Think about this. 7 years ago, people were carrying BlackBerries. That's the pace of change. We're seeing massive amounts of change here. Okay, so what's going on here? The digital revolution is bigger than this. The digital revolution is not just the fact that we're putting these technologies. The digital business model revolution is happening right now because we don't sell products anymore. And you've probably heard this before in a lot of speeches, but we do contract negotiations, and we've actually done hardware negotiations here and there. About 4 weeks ago, we helped someone with like 1,000 laptops. What do you think the winning bid on 1,000 laptops were? Per unit. Minus 20. Who else? Minus 200. Who else? Damn, you guys have heard this. Anyone else? The winning bid was negative 150. Okay? Negative 150 for a laptop. What are they buying? Service. What else? Software, support, right? Product companies are selling service. Services companies are now selling experiences. Experiences companies are selling outcomes. Let's take a look. All right, every company has a business model. Every company has 3 business metrics that matter. That's what we're talking about. In the airline industry, what is the one metric that matters? If Martin or anyone from Emirates is still in the room, you know. What is the one metric that matters? Not on time, not safety. What else? Revenue per passenger mile. What is that? Butts in seats? Okay. What we have down here is an Airbus A380. What does that do? More butts in seats. This is an incremental innovation. Go look up on Wikipedia McDonnell Douglas MD-12. 1988-89, there is a plane that looks just like that. This allows you to maintain the hub and spoke system, which allows you to go from Chicago to London, London to Dubai, Dubai to Tokyo. That is something we know. It's a hub and spoke system. They make it more efficient. What do we have up there when it's flying and not on fire? What do we have up there when it's flying? I love this car. I love this plane, really. I'm trying to get on this flight. This is an A350 or Boeing 787 Dreamliner. They do something different. And what is different about that is I create brand new route structures. I've got the ability to go from San Jose to Tokyo. I can go from Dubai to Indianapolis if I think there's a market there. I can take something from Fargo to Turkmenistan, which there's definitely a route of oil drilling going on back and forth, and create brand new routes. That is transformational innovation. That down here is incremental because we're doing something different. We're moving it along. All right, so let's think business models right here. Siemens does not sell a medical device. When you think about medical devices, the metric that matters in the US in our current healthcare system, that's fee for service, is revenue per scan. We're going for revenue per scan. Can I make $4,000 a scan? Can I make $6,000 a scan? Can I do $2,000 on a scan? Can I run that machine 23 to 24 hours? If I can do that, then I know what I need. But Siemens doesn't sell me a medical device anymore. Right? They started selling the devices are about $1 million a piece, right? They sell you a finance plan, but they don't even do that anymore. They go to you and say, look, if you want to run this machine 90% uptime, why don't you pay us $5 million for the next 6 years? And if you want to run this like 99% uptime, pay us 8, and we'll make sure in the next 24 hours, we'll drop another machine there so you never go down. We'll make sure parts get to you so you never go down. They are selling you, folks, an outcome. That machine is up. You have peace of mind when that puppy goes up. When you buy one of those things, you're guaranteeing an outcome. And even more cool is not that the fact that they're selling outcome, they're selling the data on that machine back to you. Why is some academic medical center in Baltimore called Hopkins is making $8,000 a scan, and a community hospital in Greater Baltimore called GBMC is making $4,000? What's going on? What's the difference here? What's happening? What's the changes? The data element comes into place. They are selling you the data. They're selling an outcome. They know the data. They're selling you the services around that. They're selling you peace of mind with their data, and they're breaking it back to you. And we're seeing more and more of that. Disney, another great example. They sell a set of experiences, but let me explain why. When you're young, like our little ones over there, they buy Disney products, right? So if you're old enough, you'll get this. You go see the movie, you buy the VHS, you then buy the DVD, then you buy it on Blu-ray, then you buy it again on Netflix or Amazon. What's wrong with you? You've bought the same movie 6, 7 times. And then you have kids and you do it again. Buy more? Who's from Disney? Sony, okay. All right, buy more. But the brilliance of that, it's life cycle marketing. They're going through your life stages. You just bought that, and then you go to a theme park, and then you take that experience and you say, maybe I'll go do a cruise. And then when you get old, you can even retire with Disney at Celebration in Florida. They've got you the whole way. The same darn product has been sold to you 20-some times, but that's really what they're doing. You're buying Disney for peace of mind. It's going to be a wholesome experience. It's a great brand. They've answered that question of why. That's the business model that's happening. And regardless of what's happening, there is a war, other than Lego figures getting together fighting, which is fun, and my son loves this. But other than that, this is what's going on. We're battling for your mind share. We're battling to see who's going to deliver an end-to-end experience. We're battling for outcomes. This is the digital business disruption. It's a disruption at the business model level, and also a disruption at the technology level. These shifts are happening right now. And in fact, the winning gap between number 1 and number 2 in revenues and growth, the difference between number 1 and number 2 in terms of market share, the difference between number 1 and number 2 is increasing. This is growing at a huge rate. And if you go look at number 5 or number 6 in the marketplace, they are dead. They really don't have a shot. And that's what we're talking about. Now, what's happening in digital? Well, digital is important because it makes things relevant. We have transparency. We have an understanding of exactly what's happening. We see everything. It is harsh. It is precise. It is unforgiving. But digital is also loving and warm and able to bring out context. And when we talk about context, there's something we put in the Harvard Business Review blog some time back, really talking about these systems of transactions moving to engagement, building on things that people have talked about in the past. But when you look here, and I know it's a really small chart and you're not supposed to read the chart, but if you look at this chart, what we're really trying to do is talk about the shift from analog to automation to engagement, which was sense and respond and conversations, to what we're heading towards around experiences, which is about right time relevancy. We need context to be relevant. It's context that allows us to engage and experience. And even further than that, Alan was talking about this, other people were talking about is personalization at scale. That sounds like an oxymoron. Personalization at scale. But that's where we're headed, being able to deliver at that level. And this is where context plays a role. And so context is important. Context is my role. How do I tie back to you? Context is my relationship. What products, what services, what experiences do we have together? Context is about where I'm physically standing. It's what time of day. It's my sentiment. How do I feel? And if you're really good, you can predict my intent. You know what I'm going to do next. And this is context. This is what gives us relevancy. This is about real-time relevancy, not about delivering things in right time, streams of information that make me overloaded. It's about getting information to you that makes sense, that make you want to engage, that bring things back into perspective. And yes, data plays a role. The reason data plays a role is because we got tons of data out there. Structured, unstructured, whatever. It's fast, it's big, take anything you want to describe it. The point being is we've got a lot of information. And how do we take that data, turn it into information? How do we take that information and then figure out what's important? How do we get insights out of this information? What are the patterns that are emerging? What are the questions we can ask? How do we take that and then make a decision? Because when I walk into a store and you know that I buy a Christmas sweater every year, you should know you should offer me the next Christmas sweater. If I walk in and I'm in Alabama and I'm trying to figure out as a product planning manager why red sweaters sell better in Alabama than blue sweaters in Michigan, well, it's because of the state schools. Go blue in Michigan and red in Alabama. That's the things that we're pulling up. That's the kind of information. It's not about warehouses. It's not about data. It's not about infrastructure. It's about this pathway of data to decisions. And we are moving to rapid decision, fact-based decision making that's happening based on data. It has to come from this data. So where does this go? What are the possibilities? What happens when we have all this? Well, it's happening everywhere. You saw the cool visualization from Sharp Cloud earlier. Wasn't that amazing? You guys see that from Sharp Cloud? The visualization's happening, but we're walking in. We talked about the future work. A lot of people don't work from home anymore. The ability to collaborate and engage right now, right? Walk into an environment, have your identity, put your workspace up, share that information, collaborate in ways that you haven't before. If you think about what's happening with augmented reality, this is fun. Information layers are being popped up. That was a fun conference. So, I mean, we're looking at different ways to bring print and packaging to life, different ways to transform a customer experience, different ways to kind of reshape how we communicate. And augmented reality plays one role in there. We think it's one of the top technologies for this decade. It's going to completely transform digital business. There's commerce. We talked about commerce on stage. We had some great brains on stage on that panel. And we're able to see where the future is going, but it's wrapped around this intersection of all these pillars. It's the fact that the channels don't matter anymore. Nobody cares. It's the fact that everything I do in digital has a reaction, has a signal that carries forward and has an opposite reaction. Someone is measuring that signal. You look at a page, we know. You enter a room, we know. You move anywhere, we know exactly what you're doing. And that digital exhaust is driving the input. And that tells us what supply chains we have to optimize, how do we manufacture to meet that demand, what do we have to do. It also helps informs us on what payment technologies work. How do we make things in a frictionless way? And of course, how do we wrap that again so we can bring it all together? It's all around the buyer. And once again, the outcome is how do we get these people to buy more? How do we give them a wonderful experience? How do we get them what they want? We're seeing it in areas like plant maintenance. Look at the automation at a Tesla plant, right? The digital business is happening, and it's happening at a rapid rate. Those machines are talking to each other. They're self-correcting. They're going back and figuring out how do we build this car faster? How do we move this line? How do we improve quality? And we also will hear a little bit about this. We have an Internet of Things or Internet of Everything or Industrial Internet or whatever you want to call this. The machines are talking to each other. It's a machine-to-machine, people-to-people world. And it's Terminator. It's Skynet. Right? Skynet is here. Think about that. We are in the Matrix, or are we not? Red or blue? But the point being, red? All right. So digital disruption is here. Are you ready? And that's the question. And so there's going to be adoption here in each one of these areas. It's not about social, mobile, cloud, big data, video. It's what you're going to do with it in the business model. And it happens in this phase. And this is something we talk about for every wave of technology at Constellation. It's about this deeper path. Discoveries when you figure out what's going on, what's hype, what's real, what are people really doing here, how are they putting it to work, who are the executive sponsors that are making this work, right? And then they take it and they experiment. A lot of you guys have done this experimentation. That's the essence of the Supernova Awards. You've experimented, you've piloted, you've put it into a business process. You thought about how the metrics are changing the way your business models work. And then from there, you evangelize inside the organization. You think about how can we take this from a department project to a corporate project to even outside the enterprise and share it with your suppliers, your customers, your partners, even new types of employees are activated in this framework. And when you get down to pervasiveness, it's in the budget. Think about that. When it's in the budget, it's a real project. And it's in the budget because you have an executive sponsor, you've got business metrics, you're proving that it works, you've actually gotten other people to work with you to make this technology in place, and then you can start getting to realization. Realization is the point where you can say, here is what I am not going to do. When you can decide what you're not going to do, that is the pinnacle of strategy, because you're determining and you're making choices on what you're not going to do. It's amazing. So this is important because we have a very interesting group of people in this room. And your organizational DNA is going to determine how fast you can adopt digital business. Most of you are in this room because you are market leaders or fast followers. Market leaders, these are folks that are pushing the limits. You're going to hear these stories from the Supernova Award finalists. These are folks that are saying, I want to do something, and the vendor goes back and says, oh, we don't have that yet, but let's go build it together. Those are market leaders. That's 5% of the market. This is the super, super early adopters and crossing the chasm. And when we think about the next set, these are fast followers. Fast followers say, oh my God, they're doing it. We have to catch up. We've got to do it faster, better, cheaper. How do we get there? Right? But we can't let the other guys be number one. We're going to catch up to them. Faster, better, cheaper. That's 15% of the marketplace. How many of you guys think you're market leaders? Raise your hands. That's a lot more than I'll see in most crowds. How many people think you're fast followers? Market leaders, keep your hands up. Fast followers, raise your hands. Market leaders, raise your hands. Look around you. You're never going to see this many in one room. This is why we're here. Constellation is about really addressing these early adopters. We're here because we want to bring together this community of early adopters, these innovators, these pioneers in the enterprise. We're trying to make enterprise sexy, right? Let's make enterprise sexy. And then there are cautious adopters. And at any time in your company, you'll be a cautious adopter. Cautious adopters are the ones that say, hey, look, let's go talk to a few customers. All right, they come back, and then they go talk to their boss, and their boss wants to talk to another set of customers. And then somebody sits around and says, hey, let's do a site visit, and so they do a site visit. We're 180 days out, and then they want the ROI study, right? How many people know people in companies that have an ROI study on email sitting on their desks, right? Okay, they're doing the ROI study. They say, okay, that's okay. And then they want to do a pilot. Right? We're now 2 years in the process, and they're trying to figure out how to get a pilot up and running. That's a cautious adopter. And that happens. That's 50% of the market. That's most people, right? And then we've got laggards. Laggards are, nothing's happening. I don't care. The market's not changing. But when the CEO changes, when there's a merger or acquisition, laggards become fast followers very quickly. And that's the shift that's happening. Now let's think about this. Panasonic doesn't have to do much. They don't have to lead in the market. They just had to follow, and they did that with Sony over the last 3 decades. And by doing that, they're in a much better position. They didn't have to lead or innovate. They just had to catch up and make sure they're in the trends. So fast followers can do really well. But cautious adopters have all fallen along the wayside. They've been acquired. They're gone. They're no longer there. Look at your organizational DNA, because that's a very important part. All right, so all this is happening, massive amounts of change, right? We see that happening. We see those forces there. We see the pillars of digital business coming together. We see brand new business models you can exploit and capitalize on. And how do we get there? Well, let's start with this. Those that forget that digital business is here, they're going to fail. You will fall behind. I'm not trying to preach a new thought process. It's just the evolution of change. We're seeing digital business as what is the main factor that's driving the difference between 1 and 2. And so with everything, let's go back to the business model. Think about the business model shift. What is your business about? Take that business model and go from there. Remember this? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How do you guys remember that? All right, you're psych majors. Everybody was asleep. All right. What was happening? Well, there was me. I'm being safe. I'm secure. I got food. I've got my needs met. OK, great. Here's the business version. Regulatory compliance. Don't get me sued. Don't get me fired. And don't kill anyone. Right? That's basic. You can get a CFO to sign off on any of that stuff. Then there's operational costs, right? Every dollar I spend, I'm going to save 3. Yeah, right. Maybe you'll save 1, but OK. And then there's revenue growth. Revenue growth is every dollar I spend, I'm going to make 5. Nobody believes you. You're lucky if you make 2, but that's OK. And then we get to strategic differentiation. It isn't until you get to differentiation that's where the business model shifts happen. If you're serious about digital business, you've got to sell differentiation. But differentiation happens top down. It happens at the boardroom level. And that's why it's very hard to get to these business model disruptions. But if you pitch them in these hierarchy of needs, you have a greater set of actually selling a small project, a small idea, and making it working its way to the top. And this is what becomes interesting. And this is going to be a very interesting test. How many people in this room are on the business side of the house? Raise your hands. Your line of business. Raise them really high. It's about half of this room. How many folks are on the IT side? Raise your hands. All right. It's, OK, actually, maybe it's a third of the room. Shake hands. Shake hands. Be friends. You're going to need this. Let me explain why. This is the 6 S's of personalization that we talk about. This is so important. The first thing is the business side of the house. If you agree, the business side of the house wants things simple. No manuals, no training. Let's get this thing. Let's get on it and make it work. They want it scalable. They don't want a ticket or work order or request to the IT side of the house. They want to make the change. I add a new product. I add new employees. I add a new division. I don't want to talk to IT. And they want it sexy. You want something that's exciting to use. You don't want something that's boring, something that's clunky. You want to be excited about using the apps. That's the business side of the house. But here's the thing. The IT side of the house has to play grown-up, right? Yep. The IT house plays grown-up because it's got to be safe. Do not take out another system. Do not take it out. Do not cause any chaos in the environment I have worked so hard to stabilize. Make sure it's secure. I don't want to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal for a data breach, even though the NSA has all my data. And I want it sustainable, not the green, fluffy stuff. I want a long-term platform. I don't want a 5-year platform. I don't want a 3-year platform. I want an 18-month long-term platform. Wow, that sounded funny. Right? But remember, you're working on a quarter-to-quarter basis. 18 months is a long time. And so it's the balance of these two that makes us successful. Today, IT budgets are down 5 to 10%, right? You guys are seeing those cuts. But line of business spending is up 25%. They're buying. The shift, the pendulum has moved to the business side, but we need to work together. Here's why, and this is the last thing. Scaling innovation inside a company is a common goal. We have to work together. And I'm glad, like if you look at the room, it's a third IT, 2/3 business. If you don't work together, you're in trouble. Green is line of business. They are moving. They're not waiting. They're buying in the cloud. They're buying new apps. They're going forward. They're contracting for services. They're getting stuff built. But IT has to stabilize. They have to scale. They have to make this investment pay off. Look at the curve. IT has to keep scaling and keep shifting over time. That time differential is closing. But when you're working together, this is possible because you know the direction. You can bring everything together. And this is the business IT cooperation that's needed. All right, so real quick. Big changes are happening. We see the shifts in the market. Pace of change is happening very fast. We've got to figure out what the new business models are. We are selling experiences and outcomes. Figure out your digital business model. Figure out what is important for you to be successful. Take that and then bring that back in and start thinking about where you can change. You will move as fast as your organizational DNA. I'm excited that we have Supernova Award finalists in here who are fast followers or market leaders because you get to experiment. You get to push the limits. And more importantly, that's actually why we're here tonight, to celebrate the Supernova Award finalists. So let's give a big round of applause to our finalists and a congratulations to who the winners are going to be.